to us. I'll introduce our faculty member, our facilitator to us, and then the facilitator will take it up to tell us what process mapping is, give us exercises. And but before we go into all of those details, I will like to meet us one-on-one. So in the chat room, and thank you for affirming that you can all hear me. It's greatly appreciated. So in the chat room, I'd like you to tell us what your name is. Of course, if you probably didn't name yourself well on your mobile device, I'd like you to tell us what your name is and where you're joining us from, right? So that we would be aware of where you're joining us from. So, for example, I'll go first. My name is Oluwatayo Winkonle, and I am joining us from Lagos, Nigeria. So, yes, I would like to see a lot of responses from us and to know where we are all joining from. All right. Hi, Fonsho. Hi, Tuga. Tuga, you're saying we're not seeing any screen. I am not sharing any screen either. So, hi, Olasini from Lagos, Nigeria. Hello, Olasini. Hey, Sandra from Aibanji. Sorry. Hey, Sandra from Lagos. I apologize for calling your surname in another way. Hey, Godfrey. Hi, Mujisola from Ibadan. Thank you, Engineer Ahmed from Abuja. Oluwashim from Lagos, Nigeria. Daniel from Lagos. We have a lot of people from Lagos. Ah, fantastic. Good to know. All right, I'm also joining from Lagos. Yeah. Thank you. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. And shortly, I want to, get the feel of the room. So why are you interested in learning about process mapping? Have you heard about process mapping before? Or workflow design before? Let me just get the feel of the class. So I'm publishing a poll. If you look at your device right now, you should see a poll that is asking you, how familiar are you with process mapping? So process mapping can be anything, maybe BPMN diagrams, customer journey mapping, user flows, flow charts, So let's hear it if you've heard it before. Okay, I'm looking at the poll right now, the poll results right now, and the sentiment is still here, neither here nor there, but I would like to see more of our responses to the poll. All right, thank you for keeping that coming. Thank you for keeping that coming. Oh, we have some business analysts in the house also. Welcome, Anita. Welcome, Bye. Thank you for joining the webinar. So I'm just going to delve right into it, and I'm going to be sharing my screen this time. Somebody had mentioned that they weren't seeing my screen before, and I wasn't sharing before, but now I'll start sharing my screen, and I'd like to know if you can see it. Can you see my screen now? Guys, let's keep it coming. Okay,
yes,
I'm trying to double check if you can see my screen from my other device. Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Oyerike and Oluwabumi. All right, so I'll get into it right away to introduce who we are, what we're doing, and how we're doing it, or who we are, what problem we're solving, and how we're solving it. Okay, again, I'm saying thank you for joining this webinar, Process Mapping and Workflow Design webinar. My name is Oluwatayo Winkonle, the founder and CEO here at Techlytics. Right, so let's get to it. The continent, that is the African continent, we have a substantial shortage of professionals, especially in the data domain, product management domain, and local software development. While yes, it's a given that there is a lot of already established skills within the software development space, but it is not enough. We still need more. There is a lot more opportunity in the no-code software development field. And also with the emergence of artificial intelligence technology, there really needs to be a robust development of data governance framework. And there is a lot of there's a lot of opportunity in that space. That is a lot of opportunities for data engineers, a lot of opportunities for data scientists, data analysts, BI intelligence developer, process automation developer, business analyst, name it. There's a lot. Data compliance officer, data governance officer. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a projected 230 million jobs requiring digital skills by 2030. 2030 is just about 5 years away, and we're moving closer, leading to nearly 650 million training opportunities. So we can largely see that if there's a projected gap of 2 million jobs, then we necessarily need to start filling those gaps right now, right, for the continent. Of course, some of even our skilled workers have been immigrated out of the continent, which leads a wider gap, right? And this in turn leads to a $180 billion gap potential GDP gains by 2025, already in 2025, which would mean that we would be having that massive gap in our GDP gains as the continent. Now, Techlytics, we are an EdTech institution driving Africa's growth by equipping its workforce with critical digital skills, and we're in alignment with SDG 4 for quality education and SDG 8 for decent work and economic growth. Our data analytics course is accredited by the CPD certification service in the UK. What this means is that our curriculum or our syllabus, our lesson plan has been subjected to rigorous review by regulators who have certified it worthy to be able to be considered as a continuous professional development certificate. Now, this is our vision. We want to be the leading force in Africa's digital transformation, equipping its professionals with essential skills that foster economic growth. I want to be able to do that by providing accessible, accredited digital education in data, product, and local software development. We also aim to reskill. We also aim to reskill or upskill over 10,000 professionals by 2025. We're on 4,000, and we'll keep counting on that. All right. So I've touched on the problem statement, or the problem was solving. That is, we have severe skills shortage in fields like data science, analytics, governance, product management, and no-code software development. And this is the gap we're trying to fill. That is, even existing training programs as of today, they only meet 20% of demand, and we are at the risk of 180 billion loss in GDP by 2025. Right. So how are we solving this problem? We're introducing cohort-based learning model. We're introducing strategic internship placement via our project implementation division, and we have a practice-driven experience within Techlytics. What that means is, as against theoretical and abstract learning, we're able to give our learners and some practical work. We have software that we have developed that each of our learners have access to practice hands-on with, whether it's data wrangling, skills like data privacy regulations. They are able to apply that skills right there and there, even within the classroom. All right, so these are some of our notable partnerships. We're partnered with the Nigerian Society of Engineers, training all their engineering members nationwide and beyond. We have also been able to work with some clients. These are some of the clients we've been able to work with over the years. Right, this is our team. Like two other people are missing on this slide, but right now this is our team. Glory is the programs manager at Techlytics. Timothy is our designer. We have an head of operation and also a marketing. We have a marketing associate whose pictures are not on this slide for a weird reason. All right, so I'm going to usher us into the training with our instructor, Oyiga. Mic check. Are you here? I'm going to usher us into the training session with Oyiga so that he can take the mic, or he can take the stage and lead us in the session. As the culture at Techlytics, we typically have the sessions for about 1.5 hours. and which would mean that the next session, by the time Oyiga comes in, it would lead us in the webinar session for about 45 to 50 minutes. Then we'll take questions for another 10 minutes. Then we have our closing for another about 10 minutes, so that our 1 hour, so that all the entire program is fitted into the 1 hour 30 minutes time slot. All right. Thank you. Oyiga, are you here?
Yeah, Tayo, can you hear me?
I can't hear you if you're speaking.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Oyiga, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, maybe there's a problem with Tayo. Can you hear me?
I'll send that message.
Okay. So I think let me turn on my camera. So I think let me just all the attendees can see me. Then when I begin the presentation, I think I'll just turn my camera off, so it doesn't affect the network. You know, sometimes if you are sharing your screen and your camera is on, it might affect the bandwidth. So I'll just put on my camera. Can everyone see me?
Yes, I can see you, Oyiga.
All right. So good evening, guys. Thanks for being here. As Tayo has said, my name is Onye Oyiga. I'm a business analyst stroke product manager. I have over 10 years experience. I've worked in different sectors from e-commerce to edtech to fintech. I'm currently consulting for various companies within the country. So I'll just take you guys just briefly through what it is to design process maps and workflows. It's going to be a very, very brief class, but at the same time, it's going to be very engaging and insightful. So we'll first define what process flows and workflow designs are, the benefits of the different types of process flows, and the tools we use in designing those process flows, as well as we'll also like a brief process flow, so you guys can have an idea of what it's like. I didn't see the poll. Okay, let me check it. Let me look at the poll. So let me see how many of you are familiar with process maps. Okay, somewhat familiar. I've heard completely new. Okay, so majority of the attendees here are somewhat familiar. Okay, which is at least you have an idea of what the process map is. So that's good. So I'll share my screen now. I'll share the slide so we can run through the slide, and we'll just have a brief activity where we'll just design a brief process flow. Then I'll take questions. So give me a second. Let me share my screen. Okay. So is my screen visible? Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, Oyiga, I can see your screen.
All right, awesome. So let's just jump straight into it. Unfortunately, I won't be able to see the chat. So most times I like my classes to be interactive. So I might not be able to get feedback from the attendees while I'm presenting. But if there's anything, maybe Glory, you can just bring it to my attention. Then maybe a question, or if I just ask for responses from the attendees, you can just bring it to my attention, because when I'm sharing my screen, I'll be able to see the chat.
All right. Okay, I'll do that.
All right, thanks. So welcome once again, everyone. So this class is just basically an introduction to process mapping and workflow design. So we'll just be looking at it from a very high level. What exactly is process mapping? What exactly is workflow design? The benefits, some examples of process mapping and workflow design frameworks, some of the tools we use to design all these process maps and workflows. Then also we'll just have a brief class where I'll use a particular tool I use on the day-to-day to design a brief process flow chart. So basically, what are we talking about? So that basic introduction. Process mapping and workflow designs involve visually representing and optimizing processes to improve efficiency, communication, and overall performance by identifying steps, rules, and potential bottlenecks. It helps organizations understand, analyze, and improve their processes by identifying inefficiencies, bottlenecks, and areas of optimization. Before we even go to organizations or businesses, I think the first thing anybody who wants to design a process map or a process flow needs to realize is almost everything you do on a day-to-day involves a certain level of a process. Preparing for work, preparing for church, trying to make a meal, anything you do day-to-day, you are involving and engaging in a process. So it's with that kind of mindset that you bring into process maps when you are maybe in a company or an organization and you want to identify certain challenges or bottlenecks or improve certain workflows within the organization. It's that same mentality you bring into designing process maps. So one of the benefits, one of the ideas behind process flows and workflow designs is it helps identify the different steps for an activity, the different individuals who partake in the activity, and what are the challenges, what are the bottlenecks, what are the roadblocks within the activity. For every business or every organization, one of the primary goals for an organization is to be efficient. That's to do more with less. How can we achieve more without spending? How can we achieve more while spending less? That's one of the goals of every organization. And one of the ways they can do that is if they have efficient processes that don't take a lot of resources. It could be human resources, it could be financial resources, whatever the case may be. So businesses strive on a day-to-day basis. How can we achieve this level of efficiency within our organization? And one of the ways you can help your organization or help your business or even you as an individual to achieve that is by designing process maps and seeing all the activities that take place within your organization or your company or your business or wherever you work. So by the time you can see those activities, you can flesh them out. It's easy for you to pinpoint and zero down on certain aspects or certain areas of the process to find out where the challenges are. How can we improve this particular process? This person who's responsible for this, is this person the right person to do this? Or can we shift this role to another person to get the best out of this process? So that's basically what the process flow is, just to create a visual representation of how your organization works so that you can begin to drill down and find different areas where you can either improve or better or streamline that particular process. So benefits, we've talked about the process. I know I've hinted on some of the benefits of what a process flow or improved workflow design is, but we'll also look at them now one by one. So what are the benefits of a process flow or a workflow design? Improved communication. Once you're able to visually represent the process or system within the organization, it's easy for anybody within the organization or the business to pick up that process flow and run with it. You can have a new employee that's coming to your company and the person wants to understand how does this thing work. I'm in this department. How do we do this particular task? Or how do we perform this service? If there's already a process flow designed, the person can pick it up, look at it, know where he or she comes to play in a particular process, the person knows his or her responsibility, and the person can now run with it. So it communicates vividly to any individual, anybody within a company or a business, so the person can understand what exactly that process is all about. So one of the benefits of having a clearly defined and well-designed process flow is improved communication. Another one is enhanced efficiency. With process flows and improved workflow designs, you know every aspect of the process within the organization. So you know which areas to improve. What are the critical points within a process? How do we improve it? This process has like 10 steps. Can we shorten it down to 8 steps? What do we have to take out? What do we have to replace to make it more efficient for us? So that's what the process flow or the improved workflow design will help you as an individual do. Better decision making. I think this alludes to the efficiency and communication. So with all the information you have now, okay, you understand your process, you know who's responsible, you know the areas where there are challenges within the process. As an individual or as an organization, you can make better decisions on how to improve efficiency, improve performance, improve productivity within the organization. So without that clear understanding, you might be lost. You might not know, you might be making decisions based on your gut feeling or based on sentiments. But with the process flow, you can clearly see every activity, every operation within the company or within your department. So it's easy for you to now zero down and say, okay, we need to do this, we need to do that because this particular activity, because this particular person is not doing this or not doing that. So it improves decision making within the organization. Also consistent. This is very key, consistency. If you're in a service related organization or you are running a service related business, you need to be consistent. Quality needs to be consistent. If for you to deliver a service, if you need to do ABCD on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, that ABCD needs to be consistent every day of the week. And if you have a process that tells anybody that works for you, anybody that represents you as a business, okay, if a customer comes in, or you need to deliver the service, you need to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. With that process flow is a consistent framework for anybody who is delivering a service for that company. So what you are doing today is the same thing as what you are doing tomorrow, same thing as what you are going to do in the next 10 years, as long as you keep on improving and refining the process. So it ensures consistency and reduces errors and improves quality. So that's another thing that the process flow does. What you are doing today is what you are going to be doing in the next 10 years, because it's consistent. Anybody can look at it, pick it up, and apply it on their day-to-day. So that's another benefit of having a well-designed process flow or workflow. So now that we look at the benefits, we look at some of the key considerations. What are the key things we look at when designing the process flow? It's not just to wake up one morning and start to design the process flow, which is fine, well and good. But before you even make that decision, there's some things you need to factor in and have them at the back of your mind before you start designing and developing process flows. So one of the key considerations is task sequencing. So what the process flow is determines the optimal order of tasks to achieve the desired outcome. So for every process, the process is like, and a lot of you hear about algorithm, especially now that a lot of apps and technology is very ubiquitous. We hear about the algorithm. Algorithm is just like a sequence of steps that you need to take in order to achieve a particular outcome. So for every process, it needs to be sequenced. You need to have the steps in which you want to perform that particular process, be it existing or the process that you want to develop from scratch. Me personally, whenever I want to develop a process flow, the first thing I do is I list everything. I write everything down, like on a piece of paper or on a notepad, maybe from 1 to 3. If there are like 10 steps, I write everything down. So I've already clearly put everything down on paper. So it's easy for me to now pick up those different activities and now diagram it with whichever tool I'm using. So that's the first thing you need to realize. You need to sequence your tasks step by step. It's like the first cardinal rule with regards to the designing process flows. There needs to be a sequence to every activity. You cannot do 1, 2, 3, 9, 10, 11. It needs to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on and so forth. So you need to understand what the process is, then sequence everything step by step. So that's the first consideration. Then the second consideration is role assignment. For every task within a process flow, there has to be an individual responsible for it. It could be a system. It may not necessarily be a human being or a physical resource. It could be an application or a software solution that might be responsible for that task within the process. So for every activity within a process, so you need to assign a responsibility to an individual, to a team, or to a system based on the expertise and the capability of that particular individual or the particular system or solution that you want to apply within that system. So that's another key consideration when it comes to designing process flows and workflows. Then resource allocation. So once you've sequenced your process, once you've identified the roles and responsibilities of the individual or the solution within that sequence, within that process, what are the tools that that individual or that person will need to perform that particular task? So for every activity within the process flow, who's responsible? Where does it come into play within the process? And what are the tools that person will need? Will the person need physical tools? Will the person need software tools? Will the person need another human resource to achieve a particular goal he or she wants to achieve? So that's another thing you need to factor as a key consideration when you are designing your process flows. Then also decision points. And this is another critical aspect of process flows. I think when we get to the flow charts side of this particular presentation, we'll talk about the decision points. So identify where decisions need to be made and who's responsible for making them. So for every process, there'll be times where the decisions will come into play. When you're designing them, we call them decision boxes. So the decision box is like a stop point where you have to make a decision as to what you're going to do with that particular activity that precedes the decision. If you're moving something from A to B and you want to move it from C, and you want to move it to C rather. So between B and C, there can be a decision or there can be a criteria that will now predicate whether the thing moves to a particular place or it moves another particular place. That's what we call the decision points. So you need to now identify which point along the process flow are decision points and mark them accordingly, because that might be what will make or break your process in terms of the outcome that you want to achieve. I think when we get to the activity, you see how these decision points come into play and how they can change the complexity or they can change the workflow of a particular process. So these are like the classic basic four, like I can call them considerations or like the ground rules of designing processes and workflows. You need to sequence them. You need to identify the different roles within the sequence, the resources that will be used and utilized within that process, and also the various decision points within that process. So now we're moving to the types of process maps. So before we go into the types of process maps, I want to just get like feedback from attendees. Am I clear? Is the message getting across? Does anyone have any question so far? So Glory, if you can just help me identify through the chat. Is everyone catching up? Am I too fast? I know I talk fast sometimes, but okay, I'm seeing thumbs up, so I guess that's a good sign. Okay, I can't see the chat, but I know people are responding in the chat, but I can't see, but I guess we're good then. So, okay, so we'll move to types of. Is someone on mute? We'll move to types of process maps. So for every process flow or workflow design, there are various types of process maps. There are various ways you can diagram, represent, visualize your processes, various frameworks you can use depending on the context in which you want to apply. Depending on the context in which you want to apply that particular process. So here we're looking at just a couple. There are tons of different process maps you can use. There are there are a lot, but for this particular presentation, I'll just go through like 5. Then we'll just look at 2, like not in depth, but just at the surface level before we go into the practical. So some types of common, widely used process maps. So we have the flowcharts. This is the most popular type of process map you can find out there. It's very, very basic. So you just use symbols and arrows to illustrate the sequential flow of the process. This is the foundation of every process map in existence, the flowcharts. If you can understand the flowchart, you can apply that same principle to any other process map that exists. So that's like the basic, that's like the foundation of process maps. Then we have service blueprints. So service blueprints, so they just map out the entire process of delivering a service to a customer from a customer's perspective and a business perspective. I know initially Taya talked about customer journeys. So that's when the customer wants to use a particular service, when the customer wants to get to know a business, certain activities the customer needs to engage in order for the customer to receive value from that business or that service. So what the service blueprint does is it looks at the customer's journey and also looks at the business journey and maps the two together. So for every action the customer takes, what is the corresponding action the business takes to ensure the customer receives value at the end of the day? So that's what the service blueprint merges those two together. So that's what the service blueprint is. Then we also have the business process model notation, BPMN for short. So this one is just a graphical notation for specifying business processes. So the BPMN basically is a standardized version of the flowchart, because the flowchart is very rudimentary. It's very basic. You just pick up your symbols, pick up your connectors and everything, and just draw your process. But the BPMN is more standardized. There are a lot of standard symbols that the individuals who developed the BPMN have applied, which can be spanned across any organization, any business, any country, anywhere. So anywhere you go around the world, the BPMN is standard. I think that's the major difference between it and the flowcharts. There are standard symbols, standard frameworks that are applied to it. So it can be used and it can be interpreted across different industries, across different sectors and the likes. So that's what the BPMN is. We also have the swim lane diagram. So this is used to show responsibilities of different roles and departments in the process. So the swim lane diagram, it doesn't just show you the process flow like from a flowchart perspective. It breaks the flow into different sections. If you want to break it down by role, break it down by departments, break it down by feature, or whatever metric or indice you want to use to break the process flow down, you use your swim lane diagram. So you now categorizes every activity based on this particular swim lane you've developed for it. So that's what the swim lane diagram is. They also have the CPOC diagram. This is mostly used in more of commercial supplier type of areas where you want to identify who the supplier is, the input, the process, the output, and the likes. So for more of the supplier kind of standpoint, you apply the CPOC diagram. So there's just a handful of the different types of process maps out there. There are a lot, there are numerous that are used. You can use them maybe based on the context you want to apply. It's maybe based on the sector you are in, or based on the kind of task you've been told to do. You choose the right process flow or the right workflow you want to apply to visualize a particular task, then you now apply to it. So there are a lot of them, but just for the sake of this particular presentation, I just highlighted these 5. So these are some of the most commonly used types of process maps out there. So the last one is the value stream map. So it just identifies waste and inefficiencies in the process. This is another type of process map. So if you want to just focus on what are the challenges we're facing with this particular process, what are the areas where we're expending a lot of money or resources, what are the areas that are really, really hampering the business's operational productivity, you can use the value stream map to design and flesh out that particular process. It's easy for you to identify those areas. That's another type of process map. So I think from here, we'll now look at, just on the surface level, 2 different types of process maps. I'll just shed a little bit of light on them so you can have an understanding of what they are. So we'll look at the flowchart, which I said is like the fundamental of process map. This is the genesis of what the process map is. So for any individual who wants to begin to design workflows and improve process flows and flow charts and make them more efficient and effective, you need to understand what the flow chart is. Once you can get a grasp of this, it's easy for you to translate that knowledge across other variants of process maps. So what is the flow chart? So it's basically a picture of separate steps of the process in sequential order. This is the foundation. Every process map follows the same pattern. They're all in sequence, they're all in order, and they're all separated activities. So this is what the process, this is what the flow chart is rather. So it uses symbols and shapes connected by lines to depict the sequence of steps and decisions involved. So I'll just go to the next slide, which shows us some of the symbols which are used in the flow chart. So some symbols used in the flow chart, we have the first, which is the start and end. So for every flow you want to design, there needs to be a start point and end point. I think for starters, it's always good to apply your start and end while designing the process flow. But I think as you begin to move in your career, as you begin to use process flows on a day-to-day basis, you might not necessarily have to use start and end at every time, but you understand that they are there. And they're just they're used as guardrails. So anytime you design a process flow, anybody that picks it up knows where the process starts and knows where it ends. So it provides some level of context to the particular process you're designing. So you have your arrows, which you use to connect 2 activities, and show the relationship between 2 activities together. You have your input and output. So if you are designing the process flow, and maybe you're imputing a value, or maybe you're working on a system, and you want to maybe input your login or input details into a system, they use the parallelogram as an input-output symbol to depict that particular activity. Then we have the rectangle, which is just a basic process. Maybe someone goes here, someone drops something here, or someone sends something to this person. It's just a basic representation. That's a rectangle. Then the diamond shape is a decision box. That's where every decision that is tied to that particular process is handled. Should an activity go here or there, the decision box will depict it. Is something done or not, yes or no? The decision box that will depict that particular activity. So these are the basics, these are like the fundamental symbols of the process flow. I think ideally, these are like the 5 symbols you need to design any basic process flow. There are other symbols out there. You have your document symbol. You have, as if maybe a document is being printed out from a particular system. You have your display symbol. Maybe you're working on the system. Then maybe if you put in your wrong login details, and the dialog box that comes up on the system that tells you maybe your email credentials are wrong, or your login credentials are wrong, rather. There's a symbol for that as well. There's also the manual input symbol. If you're putting something manually, there's also the manual. So there are a lot of symbols you can use within the process flow. But these are like the 5 basic ones that you need to understand first before you start playing around with other symbols. So I think once we get to the end of this presentation, I'll just do a quick practical of a standard process flow with some of these symbols. Then we'll have the service blueprint, as I said initially. So the service blueprint is an activity planning and organizing, is the activity of planning and organizing the business's resources, people, and tools and processes to improve both the customer and employees' experience. So you're just looking at the process flow from the customer's perspective and the business's perspective, seeing how those two streams of activities interact with each other. So that's basically what the service blueprint is. So the diagram that visualizes the relationship between the different service components. So it breaks down how an organization is delivering the service and details the specific key actions and interactions along that value chain. So for the components of the service blueprint are basically straightforward. So for the service blueprint, you have like there are four major components. But there's a fifth component. I won't say it's compulsory, but sometimes people tend to just skip it, especially if you're developing maybe software solutions. But if you're looking at practical service-related processes, the first component will be the physical evidence. That's like the first component of the service blueprint. So that's like the thing the customer sees physically. Like maybe if you want to design a process flow, or rather, if you want to design a service blueprint of a customer going to a hotel. So the first thing the customer does, let's say the person drives to the hotel. So the first thing the person sees is the hotel building. That's the building of the hotel, the exterior. So above the customer journey, you have the physical evidence. So that would be like the first thing within your process. So that's the physical, that's what the customer sees, what the customer can see and feel. That would be the physical hotel building per se, you get. But most times, a lot of people who design service blueprints don't really use the physical evidence when they're designing their service blueprint. But the four major ones are the customer journey. So these are like the customer actions or the customer interactions along the value chain. What does the customer do? What's the process the customer goes through in order for the customer to receive value from the particular business or service they're providing? So that's the customer journey. Then we now have the front stage actions. So this is how the organization or the business interacts with the company. So as the customer is going through the journey, what are the things the business is doing to interact with the customer, help the customer achieve the customer's goal? That's the second level of the service blueprint. Then we have the backstage journey. So what are the things the customer doesn't see that happens at the background? Because it's not every service you're providing to the customer that the customer will see how it comes about. If you go to a restaurant, you sit down and you want to order a meal, it's the waiter you see. The waiter comes in, maybe gives you the menu, you look at the menu, you pick the item you want. The waiter now takes it back to the cook and the chef in the kitchen to prepare your meal. So that chef is now the backstage action. What the chef does at the background to help prepare that meal, gives it back to the waiter, and the waiter now brings it back to you. Then we have the support processes. So these are another activities that need to happen apart from the chef in order for them to deliver. I'm just using the restaurant analogy to bring it home here. So we have the customer comes in, he meets the waiter. The waiter takes the order to the chef. Then everything happens, maybe the chopping of onions or whatever happens at the background to provide that service for the customer. So this is how the process flow has broken down that linear activity of maybe customer comes in, orders, does this, does that. You now have what the chef does, what the waiter does, what happens in the background. So you see the service blueprint is more of a detailed representation of what the process flow is supposed to be. So we'll also look at a brief slide where there's an image of a service blueprint. So this is basically what the service blueprint will look like. It might not look like this at every time, but this just gives an idea of what the service blueprint will look like. So this particular process is for maybe an individual's interaction with a pharmacy or a hospital or a medical center. So you can see the different touch points. We have the customer actions, we have the on-stage action, contact actions, we have the backstage actions, then we have the support processes. So you can see the customer arrives to the park. So what happens when the customer arrives to the park? He receives the parking pass for either he or she to drive his car and enter. So the support process is the parking garage ticket is generated. So that happens as a support process for whoever is providing the tickets to the customer. So you have the request help from staff, increase at the register, process registration, and so on and so forth. This is just basically what the service blueprint will look like. So from this process now, you can clearly identify the different interactions and different activities that take place. Who is doing what? Who is doing what for the customer? What kind of service are we providing? You can now drill down to say, okay, maybe this particular service here, or what we're doing here, do we even really need to do this? Can we automate this particular process? Do we need to have somebody here handing over this thing to the customer? Maybe we need to create a system, or maybe the person can even do it online This doesn't even have to come to the company. So by the time you've designed everything like this, it's easy for problem solvers and people who want to do process improvements to just look at this and now look at the different areas within the process and identify areas they need to improve, change, augment, add more resources and the likes. So this is just basically what an ideal service blueprint diagram will look like. So to wrap things up, there are a lot of tools you can use for process mapping. There are a lot, more than 20, 30. The list is endless. I just listed a few. You have Miro, Lucidchart, Draw.io, Microsoft Visio, Creately, MindMaster, and so on and so forth. These are just a list of some of the common ones. Me personally, I've used Miro, Lucidchart, Draw.io, Microsoft Visio, MindMaster. But in my day-to-day work, I use Draw.io. That's what I use in my day-to-day. But anyone can use any tool. The only thing you need to understand is just the concept. Once you understand the concept of designing a process flow or a workflow or a process map, you can pick up any diagramming tool and just apply your knowledge and design the process flow you would like to use. It's also good to note that if you're working in a company or an organization, you might be bound by their own work tools. Like I worked in a company before where we used only Microsoft 365 tools. So I won't say I was forced, so I was required to use Microsoft Visio to do my diagramming and my visualizations because it was interoperable with all the Microsoft suite of products from PowerPoint to SharePoint to Teams to Word and the likes. So that was that. So you need to just find a tool that you can use at the fly, which you are very comfortable with, and also be open to using different tools based on the context or based on the setting you find yourself. Be it maybe you are given a job to do and they require you to use this particular tool, or you're working for a company and the company uses a specific set of tools for their day-to-day deliverables. So that is some of the decisions you need to make in terms of the tool you need to use to start diagramming and developing your process flows and process maps. So with that, I think we've just come to the end of the presentation. I'll just go to, I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll pull up my Draw.io. That's the diagramming tool I use. Then we'll just do a brief, quick process flow illustration. So I'll show you guys how to conceptualize and start designing process flows. Are there any questions so far before we go to the brief practical? Is it clearly understood? Any questions from anyone? Anybody hear me?
Yes, Oyiga, I can hear you. I can't see any question in the chat box.
Okay, awesome. I hope the attendees are here. I'll love some feedback from them, maybe some thumbs up or just something in the chat saying we hear you, understand. So there's back and forth communication. Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up here and there. Okay, awesome. So let me pull up Draw.io. So this is the tool I use personally, Draw.io. As I said, there are a lot of tools you can pick up and use in your own personal time to start practicing and developing process flows. So I personally use Draw.io. So when you come in, you can create a new diagram. So from Draw.io, it already gives you like it tries to narrow down your, will I say, search, or gives you like a brief description of the different types of process flows you want to design. So, yeah, can you hear me?
Sorry, yeah, there's a question. I just got it now.
All right, shoot. What's the question?
Yes, so which of these tools is your go-to and why?
Okay, yeah, so I said me personally, I use Draw.io. If you can look at the screen, I've already launched it on my laptop. So that's what it's showing. Can you see my screen? Glory, is my screen visible?
Yes, it is. I can see your screen.
Yeah, so if you look at my screen, I've already launched Draw.io. It's my personal go-to diagramming tool. The reason, I think, will I say I'm kind of biased? Because when I started designing process flows and started diagramming, it was the first tool I was introduced to. That was back in, I think, 2016. Yeah, it was the first tool I was introduced to for diagramming. So ever since then, I've been stuck with it. So I think that's why I like it. I'm more or less biased. So there's really no practical reason as to why I like it. You understand? I'm just biased because it's the first tool I started using to diagram. So that's basically it. So everything now depends on you as an individual. There might be other tools that maybe from a functional standpoint could be better than it. Personally, you get. But me personally, because that's what I've used for over going to 9-10 years, I've just stuck with it. But there are still other tools I use, as I said, depending on maybe the organization I'm working with or the need at that point in time, whether it's Miro or Visio or Lucidchart. But personally, I just love Product.io. So you now have to find the one that works for you personally. That's it. So as I said, when you launch the app, and when you launch the web app or the desktop app, you can now pick whichever diagrammatic tool you want for the category. Is it an engineering diagram you want to draw? Is it network, software? Is it universal modeling language or unified modeling language rather, or the basic process flow? So I'll just do a basic process flow. So on that basic, you can have class diagrams, Kanban board, entity relationship diagrams, swim lane diagrams, whatever the case may be. So I'll just do a blank diagram, create. So you can see the canvas here. Then here you have your different symbols on the left-hand side. So you have general, advanced, different symbols. So it's just drag and drop. So as I said, if you list out your process sequentially, all you need to do is just come here, pick your symbol, drag and drop, and just develop your process flow. So let's see, what process flow should we develop as a quick? I don't want something that's too elaborate, just something very quick that we can all get valid benefit from. Okay, let's say we want to develop a process flow for like the delivery of, maybe you run an online store, maybe you have an online store or an online business on Instagram or WhatsApp. You want to now develop a process flow as to how you want to deliver items to a customer. If the customer has maybe placed an order, okay, I think let's go with that. So yeah, let's go with that. So just heads up. So we're developing a process flow or a flow chart rather for an online, for the delivery of a product a customer has placed an order for. So that's what we're going to be doing now. So I think the first thing to do is let me go with the basics. I know I don't do this normally, but for the sake of this class, so this is like the start symbol. So we'll start. We're starting here. So what's the next step? So let's say the customer places an order. So we bring the activity symbol here. So this is the activity. The customer places an order. The customer places an order. Then we have to connect the two activities together. So we use the connector arrow to connect it. So that's the first step. So after the customer places an order for the item we want to sell, so I think the next thing for us to do is to check if the item is available. Is the item in stock? Do we even have the item in order for us to fulfill the customer's order? So that is now a decision. So we now bring the diamond shape, which represents this is what we call the decision box. So we now check, is the item in stock? So we now write it in here. Is the item in stock? Okay. So we bring that here. So that's the decision box. So we now have to connect it to the activity up there. So is the item in stock? And whenever you draw a decision box, there are more often than not, there are two outcomes for every decision. Is either a yes or no for every decision. So you need to represent a yes or no with two arrows coming out of the decision box. So let's say the item, so for no, if the item is not available, we come here, we create another connector here, then we can now put what happens if the item is not available. So you have to indicate that option with the no here. So you say no here. So it now shows you that if the item is not available, what do you do? So if the customer places an order and the item is not available, what do you do? So let's say we'll email the customer and cancel order. So let's say we're going to do that. Then we now come here. So what if the item is available? So come here. You have to indicate. Don't forget to indicate. Indicate here. Let's say yes. So this one represents the item's availability. So if the item is available, what do we do? So let's say we pack the item. Let's say we pack the item. So we say we pack the item. So pack the item. So after packing the item, what do we do? Let's say we print a label. We will need to label. Let's say we're going to pack it in a box. So we print the label on the box. So you see, I'm not picking the arrows from that section on the left. I'm just copying and pasting. So it's just like PowerPoint. So you can copy and paste symbols on the canvas here. You don't need to go here every time to drag and drop. You can just copy and paste your symbols. It makes it faster. So after packing the item, you print the label. Print the label so you can label the parcel you want to put the product in. So after printing the label, you hand it over to the carrier or the dispatch rider, whatever the case may be, whatever it is. So you hand over to, let me call it carrier. So it's more generic that way. So you hand over to the carrier. So after you hand over to the carrier, what do we do? Let's say we email the customer. Let's say we email the customer with shipping confirmation and tracking info. Let's just say that, okay, we need to notify the customer that his parcel is out for delivery. So we email the customer with shipping confirmation and tracking info. Okay, I'll connect it here. So after we do that, I think we now have to create a decision. So it's not every time a parcel goes out for delivery that it gets to the customer. There could be some different reasons. Maybe there was traffic on the road. Maybe the particular dispatch rider's mode of transportation maybe his bike had an issue, or the person or the particular rider couldn't even get to the location. Maybe the person was even lost. He couldn't even identify the particular location or the address of the customer at that point in time. So for any reason that the parcel was not able to get delivered to the customer, we need to bring a decision. What happens when the parcel doesn't get to the customer? So that's what the decision here is for now. So we can now say, does the carrier deliver the item? So it's a decision. Does the carrier deliver the item? So following the design of process flows principles, we will have our yes, and we'll have our yes, and we'll have our no. Sorry. Does the carrier deliver the item? So is that a yes or no? So let's say, so for yes, if the carrier delivers the item, so customer receives parcel from carrier. So let's say that So that is so that is yes. That's a yes. So does the carrier deliver the item? Yes. So for the no, does the carrier deliver the item? So if the carrier doesn't deliver the item, what happens? What's the next line of action? What do we do in that particular instance? So we indicate it here, no. So does the carrier deliver the item? No. What do we do? So let's say we notify the customer. So after we are unable to deliver a particular product to the customer, we notify the customer. Then we can now bring it back. Let me see, I now need to use this return connector here. So we can now bring it back to its item still in stock, because well, it depends on how you want to run your service. You don't want to just leave a customer hanging because you couldn't deliver it the first time. So you can bring it back. Either you want to put it here, its item still in stock, or you want to bring it back here, customer places an order. So depending on how you want to run your process effectively, you can now place the connector just to represent how you as an individual are running the business or the process, whichever way you want to look at it. So you want to place it back here, customer places an order, or you want to place it back here, its item still in stock. So for whatever reason whatever the case may be, it comes back because you still want to provide that service to the customer. You don't just leave your customer hanging because you don't fulfill a particular service. You still want to ensure that the customer's request is fulfilled, more or less. So this is basically what a basic order fulfillment process will look like. It's not too, there are a lot of, I've done a lot of complex process designs that require, maybe you're working with a system. The system is not an interface between you and the customer. So you now have to factor in what happens when the customer logs into the platform, when the customer places an order, when the customer receives an order, how you take the customer along that value stream. Those ones are very, very complex. You can see a lot of activities, a lot of decisions. I even break them down into different swim lanes. So it's easy for you to know who are interacting with a particular process along the value chain. So this is just a basic look at what a process flow will look like. A simple order fulfillment standpoint. As more processes become complex, you might need to now start applying the different process mapping frameworks. Do you want to use a CPOC diagram? Should we use a service blueprint diagram? Should we use BPMN? Should we use process flow? Which one applies to the particular context we want to design the process flow? But for a basic delivery process, this is just what it will look like. You can play around with this. There might be other things here that you might want to do to improve this and make it more efficient. You get, so it just depends on how you want to run your business or what kind of organization you're working with and how they want to depict that flow. So this is what the basic process flow or flow charts, rather, this is what the flow chart looks like, applying the different symbols and connectors and different frameworks. So I think we've come to the end of the presentation. If there are any questions, I'll be willing to respond to them. If not, I think I'll hand over to Glory and Tayo. So thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time. I'll welcome questions at this point in time. Thanks.
Thank you, Oyiga. Questions in the room? I mean, through the chat. If you have a question, you can raise your hand, or there's a raise hand button on your top if you're joining on your mobile on the top.
So Tayo, you're breaking. I don't know if it's me.
Right.
Glory, can you hear? Is Tayo audible? On my end, it's
She's
breaking.
breaking. She's breaking. I think it's a network.
Okay.
Hi, Tayo. Can you hear me clearly? All right. So I think Tayo will join us very soon. But we're waiting for questions there. It's been a robust teaching, and I'm sure we have some questions. So if you have any questions, you can use the raise hand button, or you can drop it on the chat, and we'll be willing to take your questions. So let's give that 2 minutes for anyone that is maybe typing or trying to get their questions together while we wait for Tayo to come back. So 2 minutes, anybody, you can raise your hand and then we would allow you speak, or you can drop a message on the chat box rather. So I'm giving 2 minutes for that. I'm giving 2 minutes for that, please. Anyone before our speaker goes? So we have 1 more minute to go. We have 1 more minute to go. Anyone that has any question, let's give room for that. Any question? We have 1 more minute to go and then we'll continue. Any question? Okay. So if we don't have any questions, is anybody speaking? All right, so let's go ahead. If we don't have any questions, let's go ahead, please. All right, so thank you so much, Oyiga. That was an amazing session. It was so insightful, and even as simple as it was with the presentation and whatnot, we were still able to get a lot of insights into what was being taught. And want to say a big thank you for honoring our invitation, and we hope to have you again and again if need be. Yeah. So just like this was a tester session, right? It was just 1 hour 13. No, it's been about 1 hour. Okay, I think there's a question. Okay, let me check. Thank you. Oyiga, hope you're still here. We have 2 questions.
Yeah, can you hear me? I'm still here.
Yeah, thank you. So the first question is that what is the difference between process mapping and service blueprinting? What is the difference between process mapping and service blueprinting?
Okay. I think process mapping is more of an encapsulating term. You get. So I think service blueprinting is embedded in process mapping. Service blueprinting is a type of process mapping. So flowcharts, service blueprinting, BPMN, CPOC diagrams, swim lane diagrams are types of. It's all about process mapping. So process mapping is like the umbrella term. Process mapping, workflow design, they're like the umbrella terms. And underneath process mapping, so flowchart is a type of process mapping. Service blueprinting is a type of process mapping. You get.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's basically so it's not like they are the same thing. Process mapping is the umbrella term. So underneath process mapping, you have flowcharts, you have service blueprinting, you have BPMN, you have the other types of process mapping. So it's a type of process mapping. That's what service blueprinting is.
Okay. Thank you so much, Oyiga. Oluwaseun, I hope that answers your question. If it did, please can you just send a thumbs up so we know that you got what Oyiga said. Thank you very much. So while we wait for Oluwaseun to send the thumbs up, like I said, this is just the tester session. Can you see my screen, please? Can you see my screen? If you can see my screen, please can you just send a thumbs up? If you can see my screen, please send a thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. So this is just a tester session. And if this session can be like this, then I'm sure that you know that the main session is going to be so much insightful and informative, right? So this is just a tester session, and then we're having the full
Glory.
session. Yes, when you got with you, please.
Yeah. Permit me. Can you permit me to drop off for to drop off?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. You can drop off.
I
Thank you very
need to
much.
attend to something urgently.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Iga.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks, guys, for your attendance.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. All right.
Thank
bye-bye.
you. Yes. Yeah. So we are having a process mapping and workflow design course. It's for 4 weekends. Very, very, very easy to attend. Saturdays and Sundays, and it's a virtual class. So it's going to start from the 26th of April to the 18th of May, and it's just 124,000 naira or $80 for those that want to pay in foreign currency. If you want to understand more or get to understand more about this course, you can book a one-on-one consultation session with me or Tayo, where we can have a conversation about it. I'm going to be dropping the link on the chat box. I promise you're going to enjoy this course. You can see that just the tester session was amazing. Then think about what 1 month is going to do to your career, to your businesses, and to even leveling up, in this tech industry. So we look forward to having conversations with you. We look forward to speaking with you and helping you understand why you need to take this course. And we look forward to your registrations and having an amazing and insightful time in class. Yeah. So we've come to the end of the webinar. I want to say thank you for joining us till the end, until this time. We do not take it for granted. And we look forward to seeing you all in other webinars or other programs that we'll be having in Techlytics, and most importantly, in our upcoming process mapping class, as you learn to upskill and become better at what you do. If you have any questions, you can easily book a session with me and we can have a conversation about it. And we can also check our website link. I'm going to be dropping the link for us to check and to be able to ask questions and make informations. Thank you so much for joining. I've dropped the link on the group chat, and I hope to be hearing from each and every one of us very, very, very soon. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.